educating is really a way to ultimately help them internalize it, help them discover their goals, help them understand their why, and then ultimately help them find and see the results that they're ultimately going after. Otherwise, any information, whether we asked 1,000 questions or lead them through a certain path of which way is the best way, through failures or a hook story close or any of those types of things, if we don't have our goals, if we don't have our why, and we don't understand the result, what's the point? Hi, Elijah Loving here with Tikvah Minds. So one of the questions that we're getting is that what is your teaching philosophy and what are some techniques that you use to go ahead and help out with your teaching technique? So we're going to share that today with you guys on this video. So sharing knowledge can be a difficult thing, in part because sometimes the audience may not necessarily care, or it's not necessarily coming out. The information isn't being explained correctly or expressed or whatever it might be. And there are two techniques that I have found the most successful when being able to really kind of, again, capture that imagination or really get the initiative, or in other words, the student to be able to take on the initiative and really run away with the information. And there's two techniques that I like to use. One is where I have learned from my time with Apple and being with Apple was lead learning out, which I'm sure that's TM'd or copyrighted or some sort of thing. But essentially the technique is sound across the board, regardless of whatever and wherever you're from. And basically what that idea is that it goes through a process of questions where you're leading through that process of each question leads to the next question, and that you're providing a path through those questions in a way that is both engaging but then also a sense of discovery upon the other side, the person that you're mentoring or teaching and that sort of thing. The other technique, which is a little bit different, the other technique can come across as really sales pitchy in the sense of, hook story close. And this hook story close is what you use to be able to sell a car or sell a used car or some sort of thing like that. Well, in actuality, it's much, much, much deeper and can be used across the board in a myriad different ways. Now, one of the things with this whole idea of lead learning out is that you can get one of the downsides is that if you just go through the rote motion of it, of one question leading to the next question, leading to the next question, the individual that you're teaching or mentoring can really get this sort of it's not, again, it gets this rote feeling. It doesn't have any sort of, be it expression to it. It's just another thing that goes through another stage. It's not necessarily, you're just asking questions to ask questions type of a thing. That's probably a better way of saying it. And really, it really comes down to a few key things. One is, what is the goal? What is the goal of the individual that you are trying to share this information with? Be it through a workshop, directly, individually. What's their goal? What's their initiative? What is their focus of where they're ultimately wanting to go? Which also gets into some of the ideas of, why is this so important? What's the purpose of learning this particular topic? And the last part of this is that knowing their end result. If you don't have a why and you don't know your end result and you don't necessarily have any goals, well, the information or any information that you're going to give them through teaching an art or any other subject for that matter, just frankly isn't going to get passed on, and it's not going to be absorbed or internalized because they don't have a purpose behind it, which is a huge piece in terms of learning the information and being able to utilize it for ultimately and purposes and inventions that you could have never predicted, which is certainly the exciting part of teaching. Now, when you're asking questions and you already know a path from point A to point B as far as how to get there, and you can express, you follow this path and you take a left and you take a right and there you are. Well, the problem is again with that, is that they're not internalizing it. They're not experiencing it. And so that's where a question, what direction ultimately do you think you should go? Well, I think I should go right. Well, have you thought about what would happen if you went left? Well, if I went left, this would happen and this would happen, this would happen. Oh, well, you're right. I think going right would be the right answer. Even though you never said you should go right. This is kind of the ideas behind this idea of lead learning out. It's sort of them discovering their own invention and the path through of how to ultimately question of what questions are valuable, which ones are not, and then continue on down that path. Now, the other part of this is that failure is really, really key. It can be used as a learning experience of, well, you're right. Going left was not the right answer. Let's go another direction. It provides us feedback, direct feedback, in us dropping our pride, dropping all of our whatever perspectives, and really thinking about the overall process that we're going through. And that failure can be an incredible, useful tool as long as we keep our results, we know our why, which is our purpose, and then ultimately we can go down that path that we're wanting to go down to because our focus is ultimately on that goal. And the big thing that I absolutely love about this idea, again, about lead learning out TM, I'm sure, is that this idea about leading someone through a set of questions is that it ultimately leads to, the biggest key to this, is it leads to personal discovery. Such a huge piece in terms of what my teaching philosophy is and what I encourage others to go with as well. The next part of this is that the hook story close. And with the hook story close, again, it sounds sales pitchy. It sounds like some sort of like your used car salesman sort of an idea. But in reality, it has a lot of validity to it that as teachers, we really should pay attention to as far as how we're going to ultimately convey the information that we're trying to convey. Now, one of those is through the hook, which generally starts off with that question. What question is this individual trying to personally answer and directly going after it? In last week's video, we did a color theory. The problem is, how do I start off with color theory? Where do I start? Where do I go? What are the basics? These are types of questions that would go along with that idea of a hook. Now, the next part of that is a story. And that really comes down to a story that helps internalize. A lot of times we have the ability, and some of us are really good at problem solving. Some of us are really good at just figuring out through our gut and pure action and putting it behind us. And others of us really have a way of internalizing it in our heart. In a lot of ways, if it's not in the heart, the head and the, sort of the action orientation of us kind of has a hard time of connecting the ideas. So this is a story, really helps this idea to really internalize it. Put it here in the heart as far as having a purpose, adding that why, and then later will come the results through our action. And then ultimately that analytical side, that data side of us can really put together the ultimate direction that we want to be able to go. And a lot of times a story can be used as a way to, eternalize or, again, put it in our heart, put it in our core as far as why is this information pertinent and what was a learning experience that put it into that. Now, one thing that you can do is that you can riff sort of like a whole list of different stories. Just write stories and experiences, turning points in your life to be able to log those different things and ultimately use it as a toolbox or a resource to ultimately get to the information that you're ultimately, which then leads to that expression of whatever thing that you're trying to express. Again, that tool that you use to be able to help you understand color theory, or that tool that you've used in the past to be able to help you draw better, understand shadows better. All those types of things kind of come together in a way of, through the story of that learning experience, of that turning point, to ultimately go, oh, this is how I go about doing it. And then from there, you can be able to share that ultimate tool, which is the close. This is what the challenge is. Instead of something like, your challenge is hit the like button, or a challenge might be hit the, buy a particular product, or those types of things. But maybe from a teaching perspective, that challenge is, maybe it's an assignment, maybe it's an exercise, maybe it's using a particular tool. Whatever it is, again, that hook story close is a way of bringing them in. What is the problem? Then ultimately through a story, what is a way of ultimately putting it here, putting it in our core? And then from there, ultimately, through that, we can be able to, what's the challenge? Hey, you can do this as well. Here are the tools, and here's what I use. These are all sort of concepts that I really absolutely love using, because the biggest part to any of this is really figuring out a way that individually, the person that you're mentoring, teaching, educating, is really a way to ultimately help them internalize it, help them discover their goals, help them understand their why, and then ultimately help them find and see the results that they're ultimately going after. Otherwise, any information, whether we asked 1,000 questions or lead them through a certain path of which way is the best way, through failures or a hook story close or any of those types of things, if we don't have our goals, if we don't have our why, and we don't understand a result, what's the point? So these are my teaching philosophies, and these are tools that I have used to really help bring engagement and really change the initiative of a situation, especially when someone comes to you and they're like, I'm frustrated, I'm angry, I've experienced all sorts of failure, and I'm still not seeing the result I'm after. This is a way to be able to ultimately, what's your focus? What's the problem that you are experiencing? And then being able to direct that in a positive manner and use those failures in a way that could ultimately send you off into a sense of discovery and excitement that, again, as teachers, to be able to see the light bulb go off and see that direction happen, amazing things can happen. And that's where the really fun part of teaching takes place. If you like this video, consider liking, subscribing, and if you hung around this long, thanks for watching. Now, the other part of this too is we really do believe in this core action of directly supporting artists. So come check out ElijahLoving.com. There's a follow button. You can join an email list, and then we send some information in regards to our crowdfund or different things and different projects that we're working on, and ways of supporting each other, which is a really important part of all of this ecosystem that we really at a core value believe in. So thanks for watching. You guys have a good day, and we'll see you later. Bye, guys.